jump on the train. If for anything, join TikTok just so you can catch the lives. So what are we doing tonight? What are we doing tonight, right? So our first episode for the Real Physician Reacts is a doozy. If again, if you don't know what Real Physician Reacts is, this is my weekly live series that I go on live, and then I just react to something that comes across my social media feed. Whether it's COVID this, whether it's something about the flu, whether it's like business related, like whatever, I just give the personal opinion from the physician perspective, which I know this is something that a lot of people don't get, right? Because a lot of people, they have a very, cookie cutter presentation online, and you don't really know, like, how do they really feel about a topic, right? So I encourage you, especially if you're on YouTube, even if you follow me on TikTok. First of all, if you're watching this live and you don't follow me on TikTok, like, correct that ASAP. But even if you do follow me on TikTok, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel as well, too, because we got a lot of things coming on specifically for the YouTube channel. So this evening, we are going to be talking about, this is a very interesting process that kind of came across my feed. We have a gentleman in the state of Texas by the name of George Stewart. George Stewart is his name. And full disclosure, I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks, TikTok will allow me to go live via desktop, because then I can kind of show you what I'm reading as I'm reading, because I like to do that. I like to kind of pull up articles so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, this week they don't do it, but that's okay. We will make do exactly how we need to make do, right? Again, make sure if you're on the live, make sure you like, make sure you send them hearts, make sure you send them shares. So we have George Stewart, who is suing not one, not two. He is suing 6 medical schools, right? Let's think about this. He's suing 6 medical schools, and guess what the reason Mr. Stewart is suing these 6 medical schools? Right? Just drop it in the comments. Just take a wild guess why you think a person named George Stewart could be suing not 1, 2, 3, 6 different medical schools, all in the state of Texas. All right, I see. I see the thinking brains come. He is suing them because they didn't accept him to their medical school. So that's the first part. They didn't accept him to their medical school. Hey, how's it going? How's it going, everybody? Yeah, don't be shy. Drop it in the comments. This is going to be a lively discussion. Yes, refusing admission. Sabrina says it. He got refused admission to not 1, not 2, 6 different medical schools. So now he has turned around and he's going to sue all 6 medical schools. Now, mind you, I don't know if those are the only 6 medical schools he applied to. At least in a lawsuit, it just kind of brings that up. It's like, yeah, I'm suing all of these 6. He's suing them because they discriminated on his, in his thought process. They discriminated against him because he was white and he was a male. Like, yes, let's take that in. An institution, and we'll run some numbers in a little bit. An institution that predominantly takes white men. This guy, Mr. Stewart, is suing them because they discriminated against him because he was a white man, right? Like that. So just so we can kind of wrap our heads around the discussion for tonight. Like this is where the discussion is going. And I think it's going to be a good one. This is where the discussion is going. So here he goes, and let's see if we can name the 6 medical schools. Because not only do I have kind of the article that looks like this is out of the Texas Tribune, but like I also have the actual like lawsuit that was submitted, right? So I'm not gonna bore you. If enough people say they really want to see the lawsuit, I'll throw a link under one of my associates so you can quickly see it, but. Like this was happening, right? So he's suing Texas Tech University Health Sciences, the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, the University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston, the University of Texas Health Center at San Antonio, and the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. So all of these, yeah, that's too funny. Robin says, why is he complaining about not getting $400K debt? Robin, we could have a whole conversation on that. We can have a whole conversation on medical debt. So he's suing those 6 medical schools because he claims that, hey, you know what? The only reason why they didn't take me, a white male with an MCAT score that he reports as being 5'11", a 5'11" MCAT score, he reports that the reason why they didn't take him because he's a white man. So how did he get to this point? Like, how did he get to a point where he could say, oh, I know the reason why they didn't take me? What he did is he looked back. Like, after he was not accepted, again, I'm not sure. It doesn't say how many times he's applied to medical school. And for full disclosure, for those who may not know, Texas, like the state of Texas, is extremely tough when it comes to getting into medical school. Especially if you're out of the state trying to apply to the state of Texas medical school, extremely tough. They run a very close-knit system. But if you're in the state of Texas, it's just as tough. So it's not like it's a walk in the park just because you happen to be in the state of Texas. So here he is. I guess he's a Texas resident, went to Texas University for undergrad, and he just figured, hey, with my grades and my score, and let's talk about his grades and score just so everyone can kind of be fully aware, right, in terms of the numbers he had. He says, let's see here. He had a 3.96 GPA with a biology degree, and then he scored that 5'11" on the MCAT, right? So he's like, man, I got great numbers. What do you mean I'm not accepted to your schools? So then he went back and said, hey, I'm going to look back and see who are all of the people you accepted when you didn't accept me, which is bold, to say the least. Like, most people, when they don't get accepted to medical school, they're trying to think and they're trying to game plan. Like, okay, what can I do the next cycle around? What did I do or not do that made it so that, like, they didn't accept me this year? That's how most pre-meds think. But no, Mr. Stewart says, you know what? I'm going to look to see all the people you applied, who you accepted, I'm going to look to see what their average GPAs are. I'm going to look to see what their average MCAT scores are. And I'm going to see, was I held to a fair disadvantage? So let's just give and this really, obviously, I'm talking about medical school. I'm talking about, not getting accepted to medical school. But what's really at play here, underlying, is another attack against affirmative action. Right? It's another attack against a policy that was put in place to say, hey, you know what? We did minorities so wrong in the beginning. We did women so wrong in the beginning that we say, you know what? We need to have policies that try to at least catch up to the gap. Because there was such a significant gap of not women, not minorities in these professional schools because of everything that was done before. Again, that could be a whole long discussion as well. And here you go, you have another attempt at trying to pick at, like, oh, is this an affirmative action play? Can we make affirmative action unconstitutional? Like, this is the goal. And he talks about it, right? Because he starts comparing his scores in comparison to black applicants, his scores in comparison to female applicants. And he sees like, hey, my numbers are better. Like, why didn't I get it? And what I would tell a lot of people, which I don't think a lot of people realize it, is, that's why they say, I wonder who is backing him to get rid of. Oh, we're going to talk about that, right? We're going to definitely talk about because it's not like he just, as a pre-med student, he just kind of came up with this lawsuit. So we'll talk about who's kind of behind him with this lawsuit. When we're doing our, I guess, grouping, right? When we're looking at black applicants, white applicants, Asian applicants, East Indiana, like when we're doing that type of grouping, especially and I used to be a former program director, so I understand, we're not necessarily cross-comparing, like, all right, this white applicant and this black applicant, what did they do? A lot of times we typically group within the subgroups that they're already in. And unfortunately, especially for Mr. Stewart, within his subgroup, the white male, within that subgroup, his numbers aren't that impressive. They're impressive. Don't get it twisted. They're impressive. But within that subgroup, they're really not that impressive. So unfortunately, he is running into his own enemy, right? Like, it's his group that makes him look not as good. But unfortunately, because of Mr. Stewart, and he feels entitled, and I saw a couple people mention it, because he feels entitled to the spot, which unfortunately, I think when I see a lot of pre-meds, and especially when I used to see a lot of residents or medical students going trying to be in residency, you could tell that a lot of people felt this level of entitlement. Hey, I got these certain scores and this letter of recommendation. I'm supposed to be here. Like, that's my spot. And for a lot of these medical schools, especially in this day and age, like, they see the numbers, they're okay with the numbers, but they're not going crazy with the numbers. They're not like overly excited. They're like, all right, yep, he did good. But what else did he do? Like, and again, we're not going to speak for Mr. Stewart. I don't know what his CV looked like. I don't know what type of volunteer work he did. I don't know who he got letters of recommendation from. But when we lead with this thought process that, oh, if I got a certain number of score, I should automatically be accepted. And then we get hit with the reality that you are talking to human beings on the other side. It's not like a computer program is who accepts you to medical school. They're human beings. There are human beings who are saying, yeah, you know what? Like, yeah, his numbers look good, but maybe he did shitty on the interviews, because that happens a lot. You'd be surprised how many people will have great board scores, great numbers, and then you get them in the interview and you're asking them questions. You're trying to figure out, who is this person in front of me? And lo and behold, like, oh no, there's no way we can accept this person. Like, this person is not going to be a good fit. Now, I feel bad for him that he wasn't a good fit at 6 different medical schools. But if you have great numbers, as you claim you have, and 6 different medical schools said, nah, we're passing on that, like, there's things you're not telling us, right? Like, there's things you're just not educating us and letting us know. So we talk about, and someone kind of mentioned, like, who brought this lawsuit in the first place? Like, is it a doctor who really said, like, a pre-med who's like, oh, I'm going to sue all 6 of these medical schools, right? No. This is brought forth by, let's see, lawsuit comes out, and I'll just read the article. The lawsuit comes as the conservative majority in U.S. Supreme Court appears poised to roll back policies that allow race to be considered in college admissions in 2 cases before the fall. The lawsuits were brought to the High Court by affirmative action opponent group Students for Fair Admission, a nonprofit led by Edward Blum. And now the group is also being led by another group, America's First Legal, a group created by Stephen Miller, a former political advisor to former President Trump. Right. So, again, these are the people who are leading this fight. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Stewart is the figurehead. Like, he's the one who, again, gets put on this mantle. But we see who's in the background. Like, we see who's in the background really pulling the strings to try to get this together. Do I believe that America's First Legal and this other organization actually care if he goes to medical school at any of those places? No, of course not. And then let's think about it. You're suing me. And his lawsuit's funny. It's like 27, but it's 27 pages, but it's an easy read. His lawsuit is funny because he says, oh, I plan on applying next year. Like, I plan on continuing to apply to your school. So imagine you're on my side. You know the guy in front of you, right, is actively suing your school that you're a part of. Like, how many people are going to raise their hand and say, yes, let's take him in. Let's take him in. Like, he definitely needs to be a part of us. No, like, no one's going to do that. Like, no one, because he said, like, hey, I plan to apply next year, and you better, like, almost like as if you better accept me, right? Is that one of those talks where we talk about this level of entitlement? Like, you better take me, right? Like, it's just a wild bunch, man. Let's look at some of his comments. Let's get to these comments here, all right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, see, someone said it best, right? Which I love, right? So, let me see if I can, let's pin a comment for a little bit so we'll highlight, right? It's Texas, right? There are probably 5 billion people with those scores, and that's the truth. And especially with, unfortunately, when you're comparing his group, which, again, I feel bad that they're comparing his group, but when you're looking at other white males, his scores are not impressive. And I know it hurts. It probably hurts him to say that. It probably hurts for him to hear that the scores I have aren't really like all that. Like it probably hurts as well. So that's what's hilarious about all these things here, right? So and then Robin has a great point, right? Even with those policies, and we talked about the policies as far as trying to even up and right the ship as far as getting more minorities, more females into medicine, law, and all these other post-professional schools. Even with all those changes, it's still difficult. It is still difficult to find great physicians, right? Especially minority black physicians. And I got some numbers, right? So the AAMC, right? These are just applicants. These are just the number of applicants that applied last year. So when we talk about African American, right, or black or African American, 4,921 applicants applied to medical schools last year. That is a decrease from the year before, y'all. And mind that 4,000 is lowest, right? That is a decrease from the year before. In comparison, Asian Americans, 12,719 applied last year. Whites, 22,896 applied last year. And of course, obviously applied is one thing. We're definitely going to talk about like who actually got accepted. But I can assure you that the group that applied the least didn't suddenly jump up to the top two as far as those who are actually accepted. So you still have these policies where, like, yeah, you know, they're trying to make it even, but it ain't really working because we have gotten so discouraged with the process. And I'll just talk about medicine. We have gotten so discouraged with the process of applying and being rejected that now we aren't even applying anymore. Like, we're not even trying to apply for these spots anymore because we're so discouraged with the fact that, like, oh, we're not going to get it. Like, that is what's happening. That is what we're dealing with kind of as we speak here, right? So, and those numbers I kind of mentioned, again, about roughly 23,000. This is out of a total of 55,000 applicants last year. A total of 55,000 people roughly applied to medical school last year. Roughly about 23,000 were white. Roughly about 4,900 or let's say, well, I'll round it up, 5,000 were black, right? So that's, yeah, a little bit under 10%, right? And then 12,000 Asian, Hispanic. Let me see what my Hispanic folks here. Hispanics about 3,200. Now, it's interesting because they split up Hispanic different. So Hispanic origin only 3,200, but then there's a Hispanic white, that's 2,000. So you could roughly say probably about 5,000 when we talk about Hispanics. But let's talk about who actually got accepted. Because it's one thing to apply and send that application in and pay money to send that application in and pay money to do your interviews. It's one thing to do that, but after it's all said and done, who actually got accepted to the school, right? I think that's what's important we want to know. We had 22,000 people, total people, right, actually get accepted to medical school. 9,500 were white. For black, the number is 1,800. So remember, 4,900 applied, only about 1,800 actually got accepted. For Asian, about 12,000 applied, about 5,500 got accepted. So here, the arms race is there. Like, George, like it's not our fault, right? And when I say our, I talk about me, right? Because whenever I see like instances like this, right, where people are trying to assume that the reason why, you know, someone black or female got into medical school was because of affirmative action, they're talking about me. Like, how can I not assume like I am their one of their reference points? Like, look at Dr. Barry here, right? Like, he's probably another affirmative action admission. But like, let me tell you, right? So I'd always tell this story. I remember when I first got to medical school, first year got to medical school, you know, imposter syndrome out the wazoo. And I'm sitting here, you know, just kind of talking to my other first year students, right? For, you know, classmates and everything. And I'm just trying to figure out who these people are, right? Because, you know, I had did what I need to do. And now I'm on the other side, right? Now people are, you know, now I'm the medical student instead of the pre-med, big accomplishment. So I start asking around like, hey, you know, so how'd you get here? Because I want to know, like, was their story as rough as mine? Because I had a rough story. I'll talk about it one day, right? I had a rough story to get there. And when I would hear stories like, oh, well, my dad's an alumni here, and my mom went here, and my dad's friends with this person, and my mom's friends with this person. And all of a sudden, I started recognizing very early that I was one of the hardest working people up to date to get to that point. Right? Like, I didn't have the connections needed. I didn't have the alumni connections. I didn't know people in the dean. I didn't have good letters. I didn't have those things. But somehow, some way, because of my grades, my interview skills, and everything else, I was still able to overcome it. So I was very taken aback because it was like the wool was pulled over my eyes. Like, all of a sudden I could see. All of a sudden I could see. All of a sudden it was like, wow, like, I actually belong here. Right. And as a minority, right, one of the tough things, especially in medicine, is like, you're always wondering, like, man, shit, am I really supposed to be here? Like, is this, like, was it a mistake? Like, was I an affirmative action choice? Like, you really start thinking about that, especially when you see things like this occur. So it becomes almost a slap in the face, especially for Black physicians and female physicians. And I love to mention, right, because I think a lot of times, especially because a lot of these against affirmative action folks, right, they never seem to like draw the conclusion that women benefited greatly from affirmative action, right? Like you think the minorities had it bad, like the women were just as bad. So imagine being a Black woman. Shout out to my Black women, right? Imagine being a Black woman when you had the double whammy. You had being Black as an issue, and you had being a woman as an issue, right? So when people are fighting against affirmative action, I always wonder. I was like, man, you know what? Like, I wonder how many women are going to be affected by this fight, because like it's got to hit them too, right? And he mentions it in his lawsuit. He says, hey, like, if you're a woman, right, or if you're a minority, non-Asian, he even in his lawsuit he mentions non-Asian, so he doesn't include Asian in his lawsuit, right? Because he said no, the Asians are okay, Asian men are okay, white men are okay, but everybody else, I don't know how you got here. And it seems very suspicious for me. It's very, very suspicious, right? Like, that's, I mean, just a different little slap in the face. So that's what we typically have to deal with in this case here. Let me see here. Let's talk. Let's look at some of these comments. Yep. And yeah, you're right. These lawsuits are never random. And it's Texas, right? You already know how Texas go. I don't want someone barely operating on me who barely passed, right? Ooh, let's see. This is a good one, right? So let's talk about. So I like this comment here, right? I don't want someone operating on me who barely passed or passed with bonus points, right? When I tell you, right, King of Battle, right? When I tell you the likelihood, right, that you had a surgeon, you had a physician who had a bump in the road, right? A little trouble in his academic journey to be that surgeon to take care of you is very high. I think a lot of people will be very surprised how many doctors, right, and I'm talking about neurosurgeons, brain surgeons, I'm talking about orthopedic surgeons, cardiothoracic surgeons, primary care, OB. I think a lot of people will be very surprised if they ask their doctor for their transcripts. Like, if hey, can you give me your transcripts when you're an undergrad to pre-med, undergrad, medical school, in like your letters of when you were a residency? I think a lot of people will be shocked. But it's this misnomer that people think that if you barely pass one step of the way, whether it be your MCAT, whether it be when you're in pre-med trying to get out of anatomy of phys and you had a tough biochem too, or even more important, a tough organic chem. I know a lot of, especially my pre-med folks, know about the organic chem weed out. Right? A lot of people think because you had trouble there, you're going to have trouble when you get to my point here. Far from the case, right? And I think a lot of people will be shocked at, especially, let me tell you something, right? Full disclosure, right? Shout out to my surgeons, right? Don't hurt me, surgeons. Don't not hurt me, please. Like, when we think about surgeons, right? We're not saying that like, oh, they're the brightest of the bunch when we're talking about medicine. Right? Surgeons aren't looked at as the brightest of the bunch. Not to say that they're not smart. Please don't tag no surgeons saying Dr. Barry called them dumb. I ain't say that. I'm just saying that when we on this side, look at all of the specialties, we're not enamored by the super intelligence from a surgeon. We're enamored by the hand skills. We say, yeah, hand skills are on point, but we're not like, oh my God, like I can only imagine if that person's a neurosurgeon, they've got to be super smart, because we know the real. But again, I do like that, because again, a lot of people think that. And that's usually a lot of people's argument when we talk about affirmative action, and we're talking about getting applicants who may not meet like this standard criteria. And remember, when we talk about standard criteria, who is the standard you are comparing them to? Unfortunately, for Mr. Stewart's case, the standard that we're comparing him to was the standard that, his white men like used. Like, that's the white man standard. Hey, we just compared you to your standard. And he was upset because minorities and females were compared to their standards. And he wants it to be a wash. Right? He wants the whole human element out of it. I'm almost sure if this guy got, especially with those grades, I'm pretty sure if this guy got dropped from being accepted to 6 different medical schools, he was probably a shitty interviewer. I don't want to say 100%. Nothing's 100%. But I'm almost sure he was probably a shitty interviewer, because if you got those numbers will get your foot in the door. They'll get us to listen. Like, we'll listen if you got some good scores, which I hate in and of itself, because I don't think that should be the case. But we'll listen, right? Because like, all right, this guy's book smart. Let's see if he's street smart. Let's see if he's got some common sense. Let's see if he's gonna be a great team builder, right? Let's see if he's gonna do all those things there. And usually, once we talk about that, that's when it just falls to the side. As a program director, I have probably gone over, let's say, 12 to 1,600 applications, right, for residency, which means I probably read 12 times 3,000 to 3,600 letters of recommendation, because I usually have about 3 letters of recommendation, and I read fast, so for people who be like, oh my God, how you read that much? I read fast. And a lot of these letters of recommendations are trash anyway. Whole nother discussion we can talk on. And when folks get to that interview, the folks who I can look on paper and say, all right, yep, they did good on boards, which means like they took the time to focus on their boards. But when I look at other things, community service, team building, what other services that you offered, and I see it's dry on that side, I can almost tell what this interview is going to look like. And 9 times out of 10, the interview is just that. A person who is dry, a person who just thinks that because they got good scores, they deserve a spot here and don't think they have to work on it. Right? But yeah, definitely. Oh, I would love for them to take the MCAT away. Right? Because it's a bias. It's biased in a way, right? Because when I remember when I was taking MCAT, this is 05-ish, right? In 2005. So 2005, I was taking MCAT with my friend Lanisha Farragon, who is a family med physician now. And I remember we were all studying for this MCAT. And as we're studying, like, especially I'm the first doctor in my family. Actually, I'm the only doctor in my family right now. It's crazy. As we were studying for it, in the back of my mind, I'm just like, like I can't miss a question. And you carry that stress, you carry that burden. And for women, for minorities, a lot of times we carry so much undue stress on top of trying to take a standardized test when our education leading up to that standardized test isn't the standard, usually, right? So you have an education system that isn't even for everyone. And then you run into this standardized test and they say, hey, guess what? This test right here, like if you don't do well on this test right here, your whole like dreams and aspirations since you were like in elementary school, like kiss that goodbye. That is the pressure that pre-meds face to this day, have been facing to the daily, which is why you have a lot more schools, medical schools, residencies trying to look at other different routes of educating and trying to decide who is going to be a good person to be in my school because of how tough those conditions leading up to one standardized test. And you could have great conditions and just have a bad day, and then boom, all of a sudden your whole career trajectory is like thrown for a loop. So definitely tough, right? Yeah. This is so funny. Yeah, no, this is the time, right? Shout out to Robin, right? I want to be a doctor because my dad and grandpa are doctors. Okay, yeah, that's what it is, right? A lot of people feel so entitled. They just feel like the spot is supposed to be theirs. So imagine when you tell them the spot's not theirs. Now, mind you, with those scores, you got schools across the country that would have took this guy just based off the numbers. They're like, oh, those numbers look good. That means it makes us look good. Let's take him. He didn't want to go to those schools. He said, those schools ain't the schools for me. I want to go here. And for all I know, he probably knew he didn't have a good chance. He probably knew, like, hey, man, based on my scores, they're kind of average, and I'm a bad interviewer. He probably knew he had a bad chance. So this is his like get out of jail free card, right? And again, I don't understand the long play, because again, if I'm an interviewer, right, and George Stewart like comes across, and I'm like, hold on, is this the kid that is suing those 6 schools out of Texas? Oh, no. It ain't gonna happen. Of course, folks ain't gonna admit it, right? Because you can't admit that, right? But it ain't gonna happen. I know how bias works, because as a black physician, I get biased a lot. That is a big bias. That is a big bias that is gonna be very difficult for folks to try to get over, right? And I just don't see it happening. Yeah, I definitely think he'll be bad as a future applicant, right? See, and I love this, right? I love this point right here. Robin mentions, right? If he gets into med school, there's definitely racial bias on his part. So think about this. So now that in his mind, he automatically thinks like the only reason why a female's in medical school is because they're female. The only reason why a minority, not Asian, is in medical school because they're minority. Imagine, and now this is a person who's going to be tasked with taking care of patients. And for the most part, depending on where he's at, but the likelihood, he's going to be taking care of women, female patients, and he's going to be taking care of minority patients, right? And so this is already ingrained in him. He's not going to be able to shake that. Like, he's not shaking that. Like, he already has that in his mental. In his mental mind, he feels like, all right, my colleagues likely shouldn't be standing on the same stage that I stand, right? I should be here because I'm a white male. I don't know if they should be here. I don't know about the MCAT scores. I don't know about a GPA. And again, I wish, right? It's one of those things. It's one of those things that when you're on the outside, those things seem crazy important. It's crazy important. GPA, MCAT. Once you get on the inside and you start realizing that, like, oh, so because your pops is an alumni, that's why you're here. Oh, so you got that letter of recommendation from that one residency, president. Oh, and that's why you're here. Once you start recognizing that there are a lot other different factors at play that get people put in medical schools, like it goes world of wonders, man. All right. So this is a good question, right? So we can spin off, right? Do any HBCUs have feeder programs to med schools? So I'm in the state of Florida. So I can tell you that FAMU, right? FAMU, shout out to FAMU, that's in Tallahassee, Florida, has a feeder program to FAU, which is Florida Atlantic University from a med school standpoint. That's the one that I know of. I know that UMNDJ or Rowan University has something similar, but I forget to which university that has. You would assume that Howard should have one because Howard has their own medical school. You would assume Xavier is another one. So you would assume some of these HBCUs, but they don't really publicize it. And we kind of mentioned like knowing someone. I hate to say it, but in those HBCUs, it's even worse. It's even, boy, if you don't know who you need to know, you're likely not getting into that HBCU medical school. I hate to say it, right? Like it just is what it is. But I hate to say it. I know I'm a DO. I went to Nova Southeastern University, which is not HBCU, and I know we had like an MBS program, which is Masters in Biomedical Science. And we know that if you can get good grades in that MBS program, because essentially you took all the same first year classes, like a first year medical student, then you can, I think you still have to take another test, but you would be front line to get in place to get into that medical school, right? So there are feeder programs for schools, but they don't really publicize it. And I think a lot of the reason is that they want to make sure, right, the people who they want to get in there, it gets in there. But it's definitely available for sure. Let's see here. Let's see. That's too funny. Someone says orthopedic surgeons are sadists, right? Shout out to the orthos. They're pretty funny. Shout out to. Let's see here. Let's see. Make sure I don't want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, this is a point too, right? Shout out to Robin, right? Robin's live tonight, right? When it's crazy, and I kind of talked about just how low our numbers, especially for Black minorities, are for applying to medical school. And it's so often that a lot of times we'll be like one of the few who are in pre-med. We'll be one of the few who are in anatomy, physiology, one of the few who are in, and it just becomes evident. Like especially when you're in that pre-med state of mind trying to get to medical school, you start seeing just how small your circle becomes, especially if you don't go to the predominant HBCUs or even like a Duke or UNC that has a large population from a pre-med standpoint. You start seeing like how difficult it is, to get there, in that regards, right? Yep. Oh, shout out to the Howard doctors. Shout out. Let's see here. Yep. Oh, physics was tough. Let me tell you, my difficult. We're talking about classes right now, right? We were still in medical school. My classes for me, especially when I was an undergrad, organic and biochem, right? No, Bio 2 lab. Bio 2 lab, I just hate it. I didn't want to deal with the bugs, right? I didn't want to deal with the animals. Didn't want to do dissections. I just knew that wasn't me, in that regards. But yeah. Let's see here. Let's see if we got any more questions. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, this is definitely it right here. This is I like this comment here. Shout out to this B. Right. Like he ain't trying. Like there's no way he could be trying to get to med school. Like there's just no way. Like when you do this, like your end goal is I want to be a doctor. Like it doesn't make any sense in the world, right? Like again, I'm pretty sure. He's getting compensated one way, shape, or form. Someone joked and said, that he dodged a bullet because of that $400,000 in debt. Yeah, it's debt. The debt is crazy, but they pay you well, so you kind of gotta live with it. Hi, Summer, how you doing? Let's see. Make sure I got anything. Yeah. No. Bio 2 lab is crazy. Bio 2 lab. I remember walking into Bio 2 lab one day, and then I was just like, oh my God, like we gotta dissect all of this? Like they just had like lizards. It was just, I said, nah, this ain't it. This ain't for me. I just knew better. Oh, love it. All right, so it looks like we don't have any questions, right? So again, I love it, right? So again, this is our first of many. We typically come here Thursday evenings about 9 p.m. Eastern, Thursday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern, to talk about all kinds of topics, right? Now, I saw someone posted earlier about the C word, the COVID word. Yes, if you check my YouTube page, usually 1 out of every 3 or 4 is COVID related. So we'll definitely have a COVID real physician reacts, especially when I see something kind of crazy kind of come about. I definitely think we probably should have some pre-med discussions, some med school discussions. We'll have all of that. Like we'll kind of have all of that in the bag, right? Oh, my favorite undergrad class were immunomolecular. Interesting. I didn't really. When I say I enjoyed my classes more, I enjoyed physics more than like the bio and those types of courses. Like I was more of a fan of that. Yeah, I like the physics. Like I like the physics, and even when I got to medical school, cardiophysiology was one of my favorite courses. I like the teacher too, but cardiophysiology was definitely one of my favorite courses. I always tell people if I didn't like doing internal medicine, I would have just been a cardiologist because I really love. I really love physiology, and I really love that. But like organic chemistry, like I don't know how y'all do it. Yeah. So I see someone Robin say chemistry. I'm like, woof. Especially that organic. Maybe like Chem 1, Chem 2, okay, you got me. But when we start talking about organic chemistry and, you got to point the hydrogen one way and nah. Like I get, and mind you, like again, I'm an internist. I don't know none of that stuff for organic chemistry. I don't practice none of that stuff. It don't never come up in my day. Like that don't even, but it's unfortunately in medicine, it's one of those weed out courses that you have to deal with. Can you find your mailing address? Oh, you want to send? Oh, send me something. Oh, okay. Where's my mailing address? Do I have a mailing address somewhere? Do I have my mailing address somewhere? Do I have it? If I don't have it, I'll send you a DM, Dr. Terrion Fluker. I apologize if I pronounced that. I will send you a DM if you want to send me something. I appreciate it. So you guys be blessed. Have a great evening. Catch me tomorrow. I'm going to be going live tomorrow after I do my rehab rounds. I'm going live. We do like a post round where I just kind of say, hey, these are the patients I saw today, and I'm rounding at a couple places. I'm rounding at my rehab facility, and I'm rounding at a long-term care facility as well too, right? Yep. Oh yeah, team. Yes, shout out to Team I Am, right? Shout out to Team I Am. Poem critical. Like at least the critical, like poem. Even though poem's gotten very interesting too, right? Shout out to Summer, Dr. Summer, right? Poem's gotten very interesting, especially those who like sleep medicine. But it is what it is, right? So y'all be blessed. Have a great evening. I'm gonna get up out of here, and make sure you follow the page. If you're a YouTuber, linked in the bio. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page because we're gonna have some stuff there. What's going on, Frat? Shout out, Frat. Frat in the building. For those who don't know, Iota Phi Theta fraternity, the best of the D9. Y'all be blessed. Y'all have a great evening. Bye.